had an abortion, likely due to pressure to pursue a career first. There are high odds that a man could be dating a single mother of a dead child she got aborted. Many abort to increase their dating prospects, as you can hide an abortion from a man, but not a child. That's from Panda.
Hey, Panda, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm about to go on holiday in like 2 hours, so...
Oh, you're giving me a time crunch here. Oh, man. I'm kidding. It's fine.
But I just want to say, like, well done with all the work you're doing, especially with trying to get rid of white guilt. And that's something I'm trying to work on my channel as well.
Let's bleach guilt, shall we?
Sorry?
Let's bleach guilt, shall we?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have done so much for us, for the entire world, and it's just ridiculous that now white men are the most hated people. But you've done so much.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So let's talk about your question. You say 1/3 of British women have had an abortion likely due to pressure to pursue a career first. I don't think that's true. I think 1/3 of British women had an abortion because they chose to have an abortion. I mean, like, you're taking away agency right away. Oh, there's pressure to pursue a career first. It's like, that doesn't cause abortions.
That's true. I mean, the statistic itself is just a statistic. What I said about pressuring to do a career, that's more just going upon the general theme of what women are facing. Obviously,
and we had a call earlier. We had a call earlier with a woman who was facing a lot of career to pursue a dental career before having children. So there is pressure to pursue a career first. I get all of that. I'm just not sure how that leads directly to abortions, right? Because there's 18 different kinds of birth control available for women. So pregnancy is, well, it's almost miraculous, I guess, in those situations.
That is true. About the other caller, I'm actually planning to talk to her because I think her case is very interesting, since I've also had the same issue with expressing such beliefs as well, that I need to focus on making myself financially stable and then I can have children. And me depending on a man first would just be like me just being a leech, essentially.
Wait, that's not your perspective though, is it?
Not at all, but I would say that's the perspective I'm exposed to a lot.
Oh, yeah. Like if you depend on a man, somehow you're not independent and so on. It's like, I don't know why they use the word depend when they actually mean love and be supported by. Yeah. Women are all like, right? You got to support me. You got to support me. And it's like, can I do that financially so you can enjoy motherhood? No, that would be me being a leech. It's like, yeah, there's nothing confusing about any of this to men at all. Right. Okay. All right. Sure. So, tell me what you mean when you say there are high odds that a man could be dating a single mother of a dead child she got aborted. Do you mean that a woman who has an abortion is a single mom? Or that a single mother has a live child and also an abortion?
Okay. I know that's a really weird way to word it, but I'll clarify my position in that. Well, to me, when there's a fetus in your stomach, that is essentially a human. That's a child. They just haven't been born yet. And when you abort it, you are essentially killing that child. So obviously, I'm not saying everyone in the 1/3 statistics is in this situation, but let's say if we're speaking about someone who, let's say, had sex with like someone casually, they were going to end up as a single mum if they were going to give birth to the baby. They don't want to become a single mum, so they abort it, and no one would ever know that they were going to become a single mum. Does that make any sense?
But they're not a single mother if they abort their only child.
I guess when I use the word mother, I mean that more in a biological perspective as opposed to that.
I got these weird visions of like the aborted fetus, like the woman rocking it and like giving it birthday cake and singing to it. And it's like, no, the child dies and so does the motherhood.
As I said, I kind of viewed that more as a biological perspective, as opposed to active role. Say, for instance, if someone were to give birth to the child and they give it away, that still makes them the biological mother, but they're not having an active role in the parenting.
Okay, so then there's the biological definition, and then there's the process of being a mother, right? This is the old Dr. Phil line that parenthood, the parent is a verb, not a noun, right? And so I would say that a woman who gives birth to a child and gives the child up for adoption is not a single mother. She is the mother of a child, but she's not a single mother because she's not in the process of raising the child, right?
Sure, that could be a better way to word it, I guess.
Right, but the woman who kills the baby in the womb, not even a mother. She was pregnant, but she's not a mom. Not a mom until it comes out, in my opinion. And if it only comes out dead, not a single mom. Like, let's say that the child comes out stillborn. I had a sister this happened to. And if the child comes out stillborn and you have one child that came out dead, are you a mother? No. Sadly, tragically, I mean, heart goes out to you, but, or if you have a miscarriage, right? Which is tragically common. You have a miscarriage, then you're not a mother. You were on your road to being a mother. You were pregnant, but you didn't become a mother because the fetus, the child died in your belly. So, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say the way you analyze that, that's correct. I guess in my question, I was just trying to sound a bit drastic in it. But yeah, the way you've explained it to me, I do believe you're correct regarding that bit of information of
so just to analogize it, if you're studying medicine, you're on your way to being a doctor. When you finally get your MD, you're a doctor, right? But you're not a doctor until you get the MD. Same thing if you're on your way to being a mother because you're pregnant, you're on your way to motherhood. But anyway, now don't get me, there's still nurturing involved when you have a baby in your belly and you've got to take your folic acid and you've got to take your nutrition and you've got to not have too much coffee and no smoking, no drinking. So there's still maternal stuff that goes on with the baby. But the motherhood, I think, begins outside. And I think we would view someone whose child died, like a car accident or an illness or something, would not, if it was the only child, would not be a mother anymore, which would be, I mean, again, massive. I'm just trying to be technically sort of correct. So
yeah,
I would have trouble. I would have trouble dating a woman who had an abortion. It would be a red flag for me. Sorry to have to use that color, but that's the analogy, right? No, it would be. It would be, because my question would be, well, how did you get pregnant if you didn't want to have a baby? Now, and how am I going to know the truth, right? Because it could be, well, I was on the pill and he was using a condom and there was spermicide and we did the rhythm method, but somehow, right? Technically, yes, you can shoot gold electrons at lead and some will appear on the other side. And I guess you can shoot a few past the goalie even if you're on the other side of town, but I'll never know the truth. All I will know is that she got pregnant, and the most likely explanation is she had unprotected sex. Now, if she had unprotected sex, that means she has a very short time preference, a lack of capacity to defer gratification, which is going to be indication of a problem in the relationship. So, I mean, I'm not saying it would be a complete deal breaker because, again, depending on how much I trusted her and so on, but it would be definitely a red flag, and not as much of a red flag as a single mom, but certainly a more of a red flag than if she didn't have an abortion.
Sure. So by that regard, you're saying, obviously, both are not ideal. You'd rather go for a woman that's in neither situation.
Well, no, I would not date a single mom. I would not date a single mom.
Sure,
but I mean, and a red flag, an abortion would be a red flag, but not necessarily an automatic deal breaker like single motherhood.
Sure. Two things though. The thing is with abortion, you don't have to tell anyone about that. It's something you can easily hide away. And the second thing I have to say, I'm a bit confused with why you said that, since you are someone that has said that you are against abortion. I know you say it's a bit of a difficult topic for you, as it is for me as well. But I'm just interested that you seem to have more of a preference over. So obviously, I'm not saying you want to, but you have a
Oh, I see
preference
what you
over
mean.
someone
Like,
who's
so
had
the
an
single
abortion.
mom didn't kill her baby, but I have more problems with her than the woman who did.
Sure.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very important question, and I'm glad you raised it. And it's such a good question. I'm going to... Okay, no, I won't do that. I won't pretend there are bandwidth issues, tempting though it is. So, no, I would say this. So there is a practical element to single motherhood, which is I'm glad the baby's alive, but I don't want to pour my resources into another man's child. Now, if the woman's had an abortion, that's not great. But at least it wouldn't be the case. Now I have to pour resources into another man's child. I want to pour resources into my own child or children, right? And so also a woman who is a single mom has probably an ex-husband or an ex-boyfriend who's kind of floating around and kind of in the kid's life who is going to look at me like I'm just stealing his dessert or something, right? And that's a problem, because either he wants to get back with her, in which case I'm an interloper, or he doesn't want to get back with her, in which case he desperately does not want to be with the mother of his children, which is an even bigger red flag than the single motherhood, right? Like either she chose a good guy and she drove him away, or she chose a bad guy. So either she's horrible or she has terrible judgment. Now, there's just certain practical aspects to the single mother situation, and just time consideration and so on. Like when you get together with someone, it's nice to have just a bunch of time together to hang out, to watch movies, to curl up together and read a magazine and chat about what you're reading, to just go on vacation, to do weekends away and stuff. Like it's really nice to have that kind of time to get to know each other. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really happen when there's, one or more children floating around. That kind of time doesn't really happen at all. And then, of course, there is the challenge of trying to establish a relationship with a child who doesn't have much of a father around. And it's really complicated because you can't be any kind of disciplinarian or feedback loop. I'm not a disciplinarian, but if the kid's more than a couple of years old, you're not my dad. You can't tell me what to do. There's all this kind of surly stuff, and it's just a mess. It's a mess. So there's just certain very practical aspects to that, though I guess I'm glad that she didn't kill the baby in the womb. That doesn't mean that it means that it's more dateable in terms of the relationship succeeding.
Sure. I mean, I can understand for, let's say, a man with high sexual market value wanting to completely avoid that option, obviously, because he's got option to date women who are not in that situation. However, I'm more interested in, for instance, men with lower sexual market value. I mean, for instance, I know someone personally who he's not the most attractive, he's very overweight, he doesn't dress well, and he couldn't find a woman whatsoever. And
he can't find a woman?
He could he's now married to a wife who had a child from a previous marriage, and obviously that's not ideal, as you said, since you have to pour in more resources. But as I said, if you're a man with not many options, sometimes it can be preferable. But obviously, I think it's important to establish the fact that the woman has recognized that she's got herself into this situation. You mean losers?
So you're saying that a single mom is someone who losers might date. I mean, unless there's something more subtle about what you're saying. I mean, why wouldn't the guy just lose weight, exercise, dress better, up his game? Like, why would he want to settle for a single mom when he could up his game and get a woman who wasn't?
Well, I guess in the same way that the woman got into that situation as well.
Well, no, he can lose 50 pounds and it's legal. She can't lose 50 pounds except by ditching the kid, which is illegal, right?
You are correct. Just that some men aren't willing to go through that process, I guess.
So they're losers. I understand. Some men would rather just stay fat and unattractive, and then they'll just snuffle around a single mom. And the single mom is like, well, My sexual market value is so low because I'm a single mom. I'll put up with a guy who's 100 pounds overweight who dresses like he just cut the back seat off a Volkswagen.
Yes.
But that's not an ideal situation, and I would not recommend to either person that you pursue that, because if you get together with someone just out of a lonely, pathetic, desperate loser need, the odds of the relationship working out and you being happy is practically zero. Because the single mom is going to be in his life because he didn't want to lose weight and dress better and up his appearance. That is a confirmation of him settling with the lowest of the low. And she's going to look at him every time that he's showering and see his giant fat ass. And she's going to say, well, this is who I had to settle for because I'm a single mom. You don't think that breeds a lot of contempt and resentment over time? Eee.
You could look at it in that way, but at the same time, looking at it purely on the single mum's perspective, she would be in a far better situation if, in her perspective, I'm not speaking about the man, if she was with someone than still being a single mum. So obviously,
wait, now hang on. If she's better being with someone rather than being a single mom, why is she a single mom? She had to dump someone to be a single mom, right? Or someone had to dump her, so why didn't she change to conform to whatever the man wanted so he wouldn't dump her? I agree with you. It's better if there are two parents raising the children. So if she's better off with someone, why is she alone? Why is she not with the father of her child?
well, there are many reasons for that.
No, I agree.
There isn't.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. Right up, and I agree with you. But then saying it's better if she's with someone is false because she's chosen to not be someone, or someone's chosen to not be with her because of some reason. So you can't say it's better if she's with someone because she's alone.
I see what you're saying. Well, if it's a case of I know you're going to point me out on this, but just hypothetically speaking, if she was with someone, let's say, abusive, she would rather settle down with, as I said, someone who's not abusive, but just doesn't take care of himself. Like, that's a better situation to be with than be with a man who's physically abusing you. I'm not saying that this is the case for all single mums.
Yeah, no. So what you're saying is that it would be great if she had her son or her children bond with a man who's going to drop dead of a heart attack in 5 years or 10 years. Or who can't play with them in playgrounds, or who is embarrassing to be around because he's so fat. And trust me, kids notice and they care.
I understand what you're saying, but
single moms can up their sexual market value as well. It's not a complete disaster scenario, right? I'm talking about the guy losing weight. Single moms can up their sexual market value as well. They can look into themselves. They can figure out why they ended up in a relationship where they got pregnant and harmed their children, possibly irrevocably, probably irrevocably, by having them grow up without a father. They can go to therapy. They can, if they can't afford therapy, they can read lots of self-help books. They can get involved in self-knowledge. They can figure out exactly why they ended up on such a disastrous situation. They can clean up their lives. They can clean up their relationships. They can get dysfunctional people out of their relationships. They can learn how to be great parents, and then their sexual market value could be higher than if they were single and dysfunctional.
Sure. I mean, I've had this.
Or they could just marry a fat guy. Sorry, go
on. Sure. I mean, I've had this discussion with many people because for instance, I'm libertarian leaning, and I'm not a great fan of the whole idea of giving welfare. So the solution I've always provided is, well, if someone's a single mother and they have a child, to me, I feel like the priority is that the child needs to be needs to have the experience of experiencing, was it a husband and wife together, mother and father? But obviously, since they're not in that situation, to me, the only way to get there is, for instance, is if the single mother, just for example, becomes a maid of a two-parent household. So that way the child does get regular exposure to what it means to be with
and bring just her that kid visual to work?
No. I'm saying like being a maid, stay-at-home maid of
Oh, live-in maid.
Yeah, live-in maid. Yeah, of a family that's.
But why
a
would a
nuclear
family want a live-in maid with a kid when you could get a live-in maid without a kid?
I guess more out of virtue, you could say.
Don't you want to
like
make some noise at night? Anyway, sorry, go on.
I guess it's more like when I look into like religion and I'm sort of seeing what sort of solution they provided.
Oh, no,
like,
their solution was prevention, right? Religious solution is prevention, which is don't have sex, and for heaven's sakes, don't have a kid outside of wedlock. That's a sin.
Sure, their solution is definitely prevention. However, there are also exceptional circumstances, like even in the Catholic Church.
And then you give the child up to adoption to a two-parent household, where the child will do much better than the child would with a single mother. So single mother is just basically selfish, because they're holding on to a child that would do much better in a two-parent household on average. They're holding on to the child for emotional sustenance. They're holding on to the child for benefits, for free stuff, and it is exploiting the child. It's a form of child labor. It's indentured servitude for the sake of government rewards for single moms to hang on to their kids when they're babies, right? When they're older, who knows, right? Adopting kids out when they're 6, I have no idea how well that works or what happens. I'm talking about as a baby. If you're a single mom and you give your baby up to a well-vetted couple who is desperate for a child, that child is on average going to do a lot better than if it stays with the single mother. So it's selfish neediness, exploitation, financial, I don't know. And I'm talking about averages. There are great single moms and there are terrible adoptive families. So please, don't, I know a single mom. Okay, I understand all of that. I'm just talking about the averages, and people thinking that the plural of anecdote is data are like, I'm not talking about you. It just waste everyone's time on the planet. But in general, no, the religious solution was you give your child up for adoption, because like 10% of married couples can't have kids. And a lot of those married couples really, really want kids. So you give your child up to a functional, stable, well-educated, good income, committed two-parent household with a mother and a father. And that child is going to do way better on average than staying with a single mom. So why don't the single moms do that? Well, in the past, that would be the case of religion. The only thing that changed is the welfare state. So it's about money.
Okay, 2 points to put out. If you're talking with regards to a baby, sure. I definitely agree with you on that. Adoption is the best solution. I still believe there should be more opportunity for open adoptions. We can get into that a bit later if you're interested. However, getting a child into adoption who's like much older, that is much more difficult, since
but that's why religion said give it up at birth, because that was what was best for the child. Now, if she's held on to the child for a while, then she screwed up its chances of being adopted, which means she's further harmed the possibility of the child coming out well.
And the second point I've also had to say, one of the whole issues I think with the whole adoption argument is that now IVF is a lot more common, or surrogacy. Like a lot of people who want to have a child who can't usually go for these means, since people obviously understandably want to have a child that's genetically connected to them, as opposed to someone else's child. I'm not at all saying that no one wants to adopt a child, but many people prefer to have some sort of genetic relation to the child, whether it's through the mother or through the father.
Well, sure, because then you're dealing with a known quantity rather than some unknown quantity, which is the genetics of the parents, which is often hard to figure out. But of course, there's a massive oversupply of children to single moms these days because of the welfare state. Right, so without the welfare state, the number of single mothers was far, far fewer. Children born out of wedlock to whites in the 1950s was like 5 or 6% max. Now, of course, it's over 50% in some areas. And again, what's changed? The welfare state. And so there's far fewer children who end up needing to be adopted if there's no welfare state. So, I mean, I agree with you. There may be a mismatch and so on, but The solution that we've got is to just pay women to have children with irresponsible men. That ain't going to work. And the money's going to run out anyway, so.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I have my realms about the welfare state anyway as well. If anything, I think it just does a disservice more to women who want to have children in a stable arranged, not arranged, in a stable planned marriage. That there's more of a disservice to these types of women, whilst those who just end up pregnant, they can get stuff handed over to them. So it does a disservice to these sorts of women as well.
Well, it's just buying votes at the expense of children's futures. I mean, this is what the left has traditionally done. They don't, children being ripped from the arms of their parents. It's like nonsense. They don't care about that at all. They're just like, well, there are a lot of single moms around, so we continue to give them free stuff. Then I guess we all circle the drain till the caliphate slams down its lid on us.
Sure. Another point I also wanted to raise, you are correct in that there are many different types of contraceptives. I do agree with that. However, depending on what you use, there is still a chance of failure and misuse.
Not really. Misuse, yes, but then that's, if you can't read the instructions, maybe you shouldn't be a parent to begin with. But no, it's virtually impossible if you use birth control properly to get pregnant. And of course, even if we accept that there is some possibility, as there is always the, once in a Mary Magdalene possibility, but that's why you have sex inside a marriage, right? So that if you do end up getting pregnant, you're already in the situation that's for the best for the children. I mean, just for the best for the children. That's all I'm asking for. What is best for the children? To hell with the boomers and their narcissism and their selfishness. What is best for the children? What's best for the children is not always what's best for your penis or your vagina when you're horny. What's best for the children is the whole point. And we have a society that is structured around basically what's worse for the children. What's worse for the children? Terrible schools, government debt, terrible student loans, indoctrination into leftist ideology, leaving you $50,000 or more in debt, and sexual licentiousness that destroys families to the point where children are growing up with virtually no instruction whatsoever, and we've basically lost our civilization in 2 generations. So
sure.
That's
I agree.
that's my speech.
No, I agree with there, but I also say this: what's also worse for the children is this constant push. I understand not all. Let me just finish my point first. There's this constant push for women to pursue education, create this career. To get a career started properly, it takes a good few years to build it.
Yeah.
And this is during the time when women are at their most fertile. And that's when, because obviously when fertility is higher, that's when there is actually a higher chance of failure. Whereas, let's say if women were having children younger and then later choose to use contraception, the chance of a child coming out is far, far lower, since women's fertility would drop. And what I wanted to say is, I believe many women are aware of the fact that having children is ultimately best in their 20s. It's what's best for the children as well. But they kind of lack this guidance and support with this. And you might be wondering, well, women should not be babied in this, but let's be real, many women are kind of agreeable. Many women kind of just prefer to do what the mob does. The women that kind of want to go against that, like I would say myself and the previous caller you've had, we're kind of shunned upon, but those who go to university, and because the thing is, a lot of the people who are having abortions, they are affluent women. They're women who want to get their careers established first. And
is that true? I don't think that's true. I mean, I could be wrong, and maybe we're just looking at different data sets. And I'm not going to try and do this on the fly, sure. But my understanding is that the smarter you are, the less likely you are to end up with an unwanted pregnancy. I mean, I'm just looking at the Black community. Just had Candace Owens on. She was telling me that more than 60% of the Black babies are killed in the womb, right? And so I don't know. I mean, this is why when you said earlier in your letter, it's because they're being pushed to a career. I'm not sure. Again, people can look this up, and I just wanted to push back without anything definitive, just because I think it is important to look at that data if it exists. But I don't think it's I don't think a clusterosaur is even that high among the more cognitive elites.
I mean, perhaps maybe why we might have conflicting data is she may be using data from the United States, whilst I'm using it more UK based, which does differ slightly.
Yeah, it could be. It's not hugely important. I just wanted to not let it pass by if I disagreed. But we can't decide it conclusively right now. But I just wanted to mention that for people to look into. But sorry, go ahead.
Sure. What else was I going to say?
Sorry
I mean, I guess, like, I know you're going to really disagree with me on this, but I just think it might be an interesting point to consider. Well, it is kind of going a bit off the hook. One thing that really interests me when I was sort of reading about religion, specifically on Islam, is that they allow for men to marry multiple women. And that shocked me, as that just made me seem like, oh, that's something misogynist, that's anti-woman. And through reading, not the Quran, because as they always say, refer to the imams, go directly to what the preacher's saying. And that's what, not all, I'm not saying every imam would say this, but some sort of say, well, this case of allowing men to marry a second woman is for those who are in a situation where it's just purely just a mother and child, since before there wasn't a welfare state.
It's not necessary. Because there's no way that men are going to marry, Western men are never going to marry more than one wife, because then you end up with no stuff. You end up with one wife divorcing you, you get half the stuff. If you've got two wives divorcing you, you've got no stuff. So there would have to be a huge reform in the family court system and the anti-male, gynocentric legal system as a whole. There'd have to be a huge reform for that to even to be a possibility. And if that kind of reform happened, more men would just get married anyway, so there wouldn't be a shortage of.
That's true. I mean, that makes sense. That I'm not suggesting this as a solution for now. I'm just saying, well, this is what happened when in the East. I'm not saying it. I mean, maybe it probably won't be compatible for the West. I'm just saying, without the welfare state, if you're essentially a mother and a child in Arabia, you two are just pretty much going to die. Like that, there is no way you can.
No, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't think that happens in particular. But no, this is there's a lot of. I see the comments on there. Repeal the 19th, or the men who say, well, you just got to take away women's rights and everything will be fine. And I don't think that's true or fair or valid or universally applicable or moral. But I will say this, that men got the vote because they were drafted into war. And I've said this before, but it bears repeating. Men got the vote because they were drafted into war. That's what you had to pay to get the vote. Now, women got the vote because they complained, and men are nice. And what did women have to pay to get the vote? Well, once women got the vote, in general, they voted for big, giant government programs because for various biological and psychological reasons, women generally prefer security to freedom. Freedom benefits men because it allows you to compete and gather more resources, but security benefits women because you have to feed your children every day. So what was the big sacrifice that women made to get the vote? Men had war, which was a huge sacrifice. What sacrifice did women have to take on to get the vote? Well, I would argue that the sacrifice that women have to take to keep the vote is giving up the welfare state, and giving up old age pensions, and giving up free healthcare. That is what they're going to be drafted in if our civilization is to survive. Because right now, women's addiction to free stuff is drawing every other culture and race across the known universe into Western countries. It is the giant in a sense, spilled honey that brings other creatures to feed. And women are going to have to give up. Well, women aren't going to get to keep the welfare state and all of these benefits anyway, because no one's taking away anything that's sustainable anyway, you know. But women are going to have to give up the welfare state in order to save their societies. No one's telling the truth about this to women because most people are politicians or they're scared of women, which I think is silly. Women are people just like men, and I take on men, I'll take on women and tell them the truth. But women are going to have to give up all of this free stuff from the government if there's to be any chance for our society to continue. Women are also going to have to give up this fantasy that you can have this wonderful education and career and then just somehow magically have a great guy in your 30s and have lots of babies. You can't. You can't. And so you can educate women into a career when they're young, or you can have a civilization, but you can't have both because just not enough babies, not enough kids. So women are going to have to start having kids. They're going to have to start liking men again, white women. And they're going to have to give up free stuff from the government. And that's the price. Now, no one's saying they've got to go to Vietnam and get their ass blown off. No one's saying they've got to go off metal boats into Normandy and have their brains shot out by German machine gun fire. You just got to give up free stuff, and that's the price of the vote. It's a lot better than war. It's a lot easier than war. It's a lot safer than war. The question is, will women do it? I fear that the answer is no, which means that the fate of our civilization is sealed.
Well, to be honest, I kind of feel like it's no as well. I mean, I have had this discussion with many women, and in particular white women, just because I live in the country where I'm mainly surrounded by white women. And every time when I mention this, they like to just bring in the accusation that I'm a white nationalist, when for me, it's more, I look at the birth rates going on in this country, and ethnic minorities of Muslim background are having far more children. And to me, it's we can keep preaching about the free market and all of that, which I agree with. But if the people who believe in the free market are not having children, then we aren't going to achieve that.
England is going to be majority Muslim in a generation or two, according to current birth rates.
And
do they think that the Muslims are going to be real keen on making sure that women have their feminism and women have their preferential advantages in the workplace and that there's lots of affirmative action and equal pay for work of equal value? Good Lord, now. Good Lord, now. I mean, in certain legal situations under the Quran or under Sharia law, a woman's testimony is worth far less than that of a man. So women aren't going to get it through your heads. You don't get to keep this stuff. It's a delusion. It's a fantasy. It's never going to last. It's either going to stop because you stop it, or it's going to stop because Sharia is going to stop it. Or because everybody runs out of money, in which case there's civil war. Like, it's not going to last. And people who ignore that, well, we all know what happens to people who ignore reality in the long run.
What's that?
They don't make it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the whole reason I just brought up this whole topic, I mean, like for instance, I don't know if you remember me from my previous call. We had like quite a few months back ago, that I work in a sushi counter, and quite a lot of the people I work with.
Oh man, now I'm hungry again. My saliva remembers you.
Yeah, quite a lot of people I work from are from Islamic backgrounds. And like, for instance, one of my co-workers who he's part of a family of like 5-6 children. Or there's 2 older people, and they both are married to wives, and they have 3 children. Whilst those who are not from Islamic background, they either have 1 or no children.
Right.
And
demographics is destiny.
It really worries me.
Yeah.
That this is what's going to happen in my country. That the country that has all the freedoms, the tolerances, and
No, it's not happening because of the freedoms. It's happening because of the tyranny. It's happening because of the welfare state. And it's happening because the government, see, once the government's in control of the currency, once the government controls the currency, the citizens lose control of the government. Because creating money out of thin air, borrowing money, printing bonds, and getting money is the great delusion by which the government pretends it's adding value to the economy.
Sure.
And so you end up with these infinite resources. Now, if you have infinite resources, why would you want to say no to someone? Why would you want to say no to anyone? We've got infinite resources. We have as much money as we want. We have as many resources. We have as much healthcare as we want. We have as much housing as we want. There's no limit to anything. We've become psychotic in the West, like deeply delusional. We've become like somebody who's got a limited stock of food, who's just wolfing down all the food at the beginning of winter. Ah, we got food forever. We got nothing but food. Why would you bring the neighbors over? Everyone can come in and eat my food. It's like, you're going to starve. We've become deeply delusional because we've been lulled into this genuinely, I'm not kidding about this, it's a psychotic frame of mind. When you go to somebody who's megalomaniacal, who's intensely narcissistic, who's got delusions of grandeur, and you try to put limits on them, they get enraged. Like you say to some coke addict, stop taking coke tonight, he's going to get enraged. Try and take away food from the binge eater, they're going to get enraged. We have got this delusion of endless omnipotence and resources. We have become deluded gods in the graveyards of our freedoms. And we are not expiring because we're free. We're expiring because we're free from reality. We've been cut loose from any empiricism, any restraint, any rationality. Nobody says, well, we can bring in all these migrants, but we have to triple your tax bill because they're expensive. No, it's just debt and borrowing and money printing and bullshit. So anyone who says no, well, you just got to be a racist and blah, 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 right? We've become completely delusional. We can say to women, go get an education, spend your fertility years slaving away in a cubicle under fluorescent lights, typing meaningless bullshit that no one's probably ever going to read. And yet we still get to have a civilization. We don't, because there are no kids. It's like children of men. None. We can create a system that destroys any incentive for men to get married. Same thing that happened in Japan. The Japanese kids these days, they see what happened with their fathers who worked from daybreak to midnight, never got to see their kids. They saw, if there was a divorce, catastrophe for the man. They saw him basically being a slave, and now people are like, well, I wonder why the Japanese kids don't want to have kids anymore. So it is not because we're free that we are expiring. It's because we are deluded. We are detached from reality. We have this like it's like you could, I mean, what would your spending be like if somebody typed $10 million into your bank account? Well, you'd probably go out and spend a whole lot. And if it turned out that money was illusory, well, like some people who have Bitcoin, you'd have a lot of money to pay back and you wouldn't have the resources to pay it back. If you thought you were invulnerable, that you couldn't be hurt physically, bullets would not pierce your skin, then you'd do insane parkour and you'd die right away. Delusions of grandeur, delusions of omnipotence are fatal to an individual and to a society. And we have these delusions of grandeur that we can do anything and pay for everything and absorb everything and take every culture, and there's never going to be an end to our resources. There's never going to be a limit to anything. That is psychotic. That is psychotic. And that is not a delusion that other cultures share, because those cultures have come from want and hardship, right? And so those cultures are like, yeah, we could educate our children we could educate our women and have them drive and this and that and the other, but then we just won't have any kids. So we're not going to do that. And again, the answer is freedom. The answer is freedom. But we are expiring from an excess of sin, not an excess of virtue. Freedom is a virtue. But we're not free to ostracize anyone anymore. We're not free to say, I don't want to pay for single moms. We're not free to say, I don't want to pay for women who abandon their families. I don't want to pay for men who abandon their families. I don't want to pay for the healthcare of people who chose to get fat and didn't exercise. I don't want to pay for the teeth and dental care of people who just didn't floss and brush. I don't want to pay for it. We have lost the ability to ostracize each other. And that was the fundamental freedoms that we had. That was the fundamental freedoms. Now everyone, open borders, fuck open borders, it's open wallets, it's the problem. Build a wall around your wallet and you have freedom. Build a wall around your country, maybe. I can't even get that done unless you're Israel. So it's not that free market people aren't having kids. It's because we have almost no free market left. And money is being herded around from people to buy votes at the point of statist bayonets and debt and the enslavement of our children. And then we invite people from the Middle East, we invite people from Africa, we invite all these people into our culture, and we expect them to assimilate? Fuck, I don't want to assimilate to the West as it stands. Oh, look at this great culture we have. We don't see our children. The women go off to work. You get 2 weeks after you give birth, then you're back at your job. We have massive amounts of debt. We indoctrinate our children into communism. Women can destroy families on a whim. They can accuse husbands of sexual abuse of children and destroy their lives like that. Want to be like us? Of course they don't. Hell, they probably feel, let's put them out of their misery, culturally speaking. Hard to disagree. We have drifted so far from where we were, from the freedoms that founded our nations and our cultures. We have been bought and paid for. And we took that fundamental temptation that the devil offered Jesus. I should give you the whole world in exchange for your soul. And we sold off our children and their future for the sake of petty shit in the here and now, mere materialism, mere possessions, demonic and material. What's
That's
left to
interesting.
say? Go on.
Sorry. I was just saying that's interesting. You mentioned materialism as well. That's something I have discussed in my channel. That women these days, they're sort of seeing femininity as more of a materialistic thing as opposed to a maternalistic thing. That now, because you sort of see many people sort of saying, "Oh, I'm not going to have children because I can't afford it," but they can afford to spend a lot of money on makeup, fancy clothes, traveling around the world.
Average birth rate in some places in Africa is 5.2. Do you think they can afford it?
Exactly, yeah.
So, Panda, you know how I know you're a very nice young lady?
How comes?
Well, first of all, you're a listener to this fine quality show, but secondly, and we're having a great conversation, but also, you've mentioned your channel, but you haven't told me the name.
Oh.
You haven't told all of the people who are listening to this show the name of your channel, and you should.
Sure. It's Panda Mogia, together in one word. So Panda Mogia spelled Mogia. The video I think everyone should look out for because it's relevant to discussion. I created a video called Motherhood in Your 20s. That's a video relevant. Sorry, I'm just a bit flustered.
No, you should. You're a very nice young lady, but you got to just ask for things. And you got to just put the name in. I'm not going to, what am I going to do? Cut it out or yell over it or something? Just put the name of your channel in. I'm happy if there's people talking. Listen, if you're a woman talking about motherhood in your 20s, I'm down with that message. Go listen to her channel.
Sure. I mean, I guess the main reason I just want to talk about, because I feel like many women are secretly kind of aware of it. I think many women are kind of aware of the fact that having children is optimum in their 20s, but they kind of feel like, oh no, but I need to establish my career first. Because this is something even my parents are constantly telling me. And I'm from an Iranian background as well, let alone people from much more liberal-minded backgrounds, and they probably like that girl you're talking to. She probably has it like that, and another thing I think a lot of women really need to consider is, do you seriously think it's normal to have to put yourself on hormones for like 10 years of your life to then later be put on more drugs to create more babies?
It's
So
not exactly
it's
old school now, is it?
no, well, I mean, essentially, in some ways, I'd say women are kind of being drugged. Obviously, I understand it's better to go on contraception than to become a single mother. Obviously, I completely get that. But I think it's something more women need to question. That why is it that you have to go to the doctor to get contraceptives? Why is it not something you can just readily get? Because there are big side effects on it. And one thing I remember, was it Blonde in the Belly of the Beast? She mentioned that being on contraceptives does actually affect your ability to choose a partner. Like I mean, for instance, like I used to be on contraceptives, and that was also the time when I felt like I wasn't really considering my partner choices as much, because I'm just like, well, I'm protected, it doesn't matter. When I mean contraceptives, I'm specifically referring to hormonal ones, because those tend to be much more effective than, let's say, barrier methods as opposed to condoms, which are still effective, I'm not denying that, but there's a little bit more of a leeway because it can break. But I think this is something
You don't have to
much
be
more
with as nice a guy if for sure you can't get pregnant, right?
Well, I know for a fact now that I completely refuse to use hormonal contraceptives. I need to really think about who I'm with. I can't just be with anyone, because obviously I mean, I still do understand that it's better for me to be married. But let me put to
Well,
you
it's
this way,
also better for
Stefan.
you, sorry to interrupt, but it's also better for you to not repeatedly get your heart broken.
Yeah,
That
I
really
mean,
messes up your capacity to bond with someone.
yes, definitely. But this is kind of seen as something normal, that like I'm part of like a few women's groups. I don't usually agree with them, but I'm just kind of interested to sort of just hear what other women's experience. And usually when you sort of see someone that had a breakup and like, oh, it's fine, like just like do some, was it self-help stuff, like go and watch a movie, like go and hang out with friends. And it's kind of like I feel like, well, but when I sort of look into religion, the whole point way religion is structured is to sort of avoid those sorts of situations again into intense heartbreak, because
Especially if, like, for men, changing girlfriends is like changing jobs, but for women, it's like dying to change a boyfriend.
I've established that on my previous call.
Yeah.
But it's kind of all characterized as a part of your life, something every woman has to go through. And I'm like, well, many Muslim women are not going through that, and I reckon that's probably why a lot of feminists, in some ways, are taking an interest in, maybe not taking an interest, but sort of somewhat sympathetic to Islam. I know there's this whole power, like what the state wants and all of that. That's all true, but I think there's an element of like jealousy. That why do I mean, I know there are issues in Islam. I'm not saying it's all perfect and all of that, but I'm saying that
Yeah, I think we can take that for granted.
they feel like they're
on.
missing out on something. I really sense that, like the feminists, they feel like they're kind of missing out on, I guess, a sense of stability, because Islam is very clear with what a woman is supposed to do, whilst in Western society, it's a bit all over the place for women, to be honest. Now you have to be a careerist and kind of have kids on the side, which most women can't do that. I mean, when you see women who are careerists,
like, why would you want to peel the baby nursing off your breast, get into a car, fight traffic, and go make money for someone else? Like, why would you want to do that? I never have understood that. But of course, women are a bit hive-mindy, right? And women are a bit, well, they score very high in agreeableness and neuroticism, which means that, well, they take social cues a little bit more so than men. But I don't know how women got talked out of motherhood. That just blows my mind. That's just an amazing feat. It's like talking men out of sex, you know, like it's just amazing. And well, I guess that's the MGTOW thing too, right? But how you know, I mean, I've been a stay-at-home dad, and my wife was a stay-at-home mom, and it's like, why would you want to peel that child off you, drive it off to some stranger's house, and then go to work? That's weird. That's your baby. That's the thing that looks at you with those big, luminous Disney eyes and desperately needs you and you alone more than any other thing in the known universe. Wants to bond with you, wants to play with you, wants to connect with you, wants to fall asleep on you, wants to cuddle with you, wants to listen to your voice, wants to merge and then grow from you. You are the soil from which these roots go deep and the child grows high. Why would you want to give that up for a heavily taxed paycheck? Ew, like how horrible. How on earth was it possible to talk about these, women with a maternal instinct, the women's a maternal instinct? It's like, it really didn't take much to talk women out of having kids and being moms and bonding with their kids. And it's like, that's really sad. That's really fundamentally very, very sad.
Could I give a theory for that?
Yeah, go ahead. We got to keep it quick. I got one more caller, but go ahead.
Sure, I understand. Well, to me, it seems like when you have children, it really exposes a part of yourself that you don't really know until you have children. I mean, I'm speaking as someone who doesn't have a child, but I think you've mentioned it somewhere where on one of your videos where when you had your daughter, it felt like your entire life flipped around. You just had to. It exposes a part of you that you don't really see when you're just living completely by your own means. And I think a lot of women don't want that to be exposed from them because they don't want to see who they really are and prefer to just see themselves as just good people, men are evil. And if you don't have children, it's really hard to sort of see that aspect of yourself. Does that make sense?
No, I don't agree with you at all. You could be right, but I'll just tell you what I think it is. Women like approval, and women don't like disapproval. And right now, women get approval, as you heard from the earlier caller, if you've experienced yourself, Panda, women get approval by going to work and delaying motherhood. And women get disapproval for staying home when they're young and being moms.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know that it's that much more complicated. It's like, I would rather have approval than motherhood. I would rather avoid disapproval than be with my baby. That's how strong women's preference for approval and avoidance of disapproval is. That it's stronger than the maternal instinct because it didn't take a lot of pressure for women to give up being moms for the sake of approval. It's much, much stronger than the maternal instinct. I don't know why, but it is.
Sure. Thank you very much, Stefan.
I appreciate the call and let me know how it goes. And